Well, hello, friends, and happy Thanksgiving. Yes, another What's Right show on the go. I thought today we would do something a little bit different and out of character for me. Generally speaking, I strive, by the way, every time we sit down, Robbie and I, the team preparing a program, we really do intend to deliver the most original content, ideas, and thoughts that we possibly can. And I don't, although perhaps sometimes we'll, adopt a thought or two, really do try to be as original as possible. Today I want to do something different. I actually want to have a show, a slight homage to Rush Limbaugh. Because Rush, growing up, I absolutely loved this time of year. Leading up to Thanksgiving, Rush would give us the true story of Thanksgiving. And this was not, of course, the sanitized version that many of us learned in elementary school and, the multicultural paradise that was the white pilgrims and the Indians getting together for a feast, the white man thanking the Indian for saving his life. That was maybe just a part of it, but there's so much more to the story. And so I thought today I would be highly unoriginal and recite a bit of history here, keep alive this tradition that Rush started and continued for many years here on the What's Right show. So, obviously, we all know the original, or I guess I call it sanitized version or the kind of reductive version of what happened. But the story of Thanksgiving goes all the way back to well before the voyage of the Mayflower in the 1600s. The Church of England, Great Britain, England back then, King James, they were persecuting anybody and everybody who did not recognize the absolute authority of the church and crown. And for the pilgrims who sought to worship God differently, they became targets certainly of the king and of the Church of England, and were really persecuted in a horrifying way. And they they were threatened with arrest, deprivation of property, and certainly even death. So it was decided among them that they needed to flee the country. And some, these would have been, we'd call them today dissidents. And again, I'll just point out here that today's England, today's Great Britain, certainly seems to reflect the authoritarian nature of the England of the 17th century. So leaving that there, the pilgrims, a group of them, went to Holland first, and there they formed a small community and began working on a project to travel to the New World. And it took them about 11 years to do this, and eventually 40 of them agreed to make the journey to the New World, where they knew they would certainly face hardships. They also knew that they could live and worship according to the dictates of their own consciences. So this was what they wanted to do. And what was this? August 1st, 1620, they get on a ship called the Mayflower. Now, we know this part of the story very well. There were only about 40 pilgrims on the ship, a total of 102 passengers. So, the Mayflower was not all pilgrims. There was a small group of them there. And they were led on the journey by a man named William Bradford. Now, Bradford set up an agreement, a contract on this journey. And it was socialism. That's what it was. Equal and just laws for all members of the new community, irrespective of their religious beliefs. And these revolutionary ideas, they came from the Bible, they came from the Old and New Testament. And because, of course, it was in the Bible, none of the people there, the pilgrims, thought anything about it. They thought that this experiment would work. These were people that were very faithful, and they traveled to the New World. It was long, it was arduous. And when they landed in New England in November, and this is all written down in Bradford's journal, they found an absolutely inhospitable landscape. It was cold, it was barren. there was no plenty, and they had to really create something out of nothing. So while they had their freedom, they really didn't have any comforts of life. And during the first winter, half of them died. William Bradford's wife died either of starvation or exposure. And finally, spring came. And now the Indians, the Native Americans, they actually did teach them how to plant corn, how to fish, how to hunt. But the Pilgrims' lives improved slightly, but they didn't prosper exactly, okay? And there's a reason for this that makes the true story of Thanksgiving so important. Because while we in the classroom as young children are taught basically that story and it ends there, the school system, okay, the curriculum forgets the most important part. The modern American history ends at actually a part where the story just begins. Okay? Now, the Pilgrims, they show up, right? They don't know what they're doing. Nothing is set up for them. They don't have a place to stay. They're starving. The Indians fed them. Okay, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the story. And, what happened here is the Pilgrims, in their great effort to put together a perfect society, leaned on this socialist idea of collectivism. Okay? That's what they wanted to do. They believed in their contract that everything that they would produce as a community would go into a common store, a single bank. Okay? Every member would be entitled then to, and I think it was set up as one equal share, like they got a piece of the entire colony, but no one owned their own property. No one was entitled to the fruits of their own labor. So everything was same. Everything was equal. Everything was socialism, right? And where no one owned anything, all right, also, nobody had any motive to produce. It didn't matter how much effort you put into it. It didn't matter how much you contributed. You only took away your one share. Now, we all know what happens in stories like this. Everywhere systems of this type, wherever they're enacted, there are a few producers who eventually lose all motivation to produce. Now, this commune, and I always love this part of the story, Rush would call it, he likened it to the California communes of the 60s and 70s. He'd bring up Humboldt County. He called it Humboldt County, California, minus the weed, okay? And now this William Bradford guy, okay, became the new governor of the colony. He recognized that none of it was working because, everything got distributed equally and there was no incentive for people to work. The colony was gradually dying. And so what happened? Okay. He realized this isn't working. And they tore up the first contract. They did something. This William Bradford guy and the Pilgrims, they did something that subsequent leaders, presidents, so-called liberal visionaries refused to do. Nobody's done a rethink on communism or socialism. They keep trying to do the same thing different ways, hoping for a better result. Failure, misery, death, destruction follow. So he tore up the contract. They said, okay, we're going to start over. And they decided to turn to a system that we call capitalism. The more you produce, the more you get to keep, the harder you work, the greater are the fruits of your labor. If you wanted a bigger house than the guy next to you, God bless you, go build it. Work hard, And all of a sudden, what happened is in this budding, almost, at the time, almost dying colony, everything takes off. The Pilgrims enjoyed an enormous economic boom. And their plenty, okay, far greater than they'd had under the previous Mayflower Compact, was what they were truly grateful for. Okay. The original Thanksgiving dinner was an expression of gratitude to God for helping them survive and thrive in a place that no one had ever before. So, by the way, this Bradford guy, the governor of the colony, after he abandoned the original compact and converting basically to capitalism, hey, you can keep what you earn, earn as much as you produce, greed is good, if you will. They didn't put it in those terms. So, turning free enterprise loose, they had so much success. And in his journal, he writes, for it made all hands industrious, so much as more corn was planted than otherwise would have been. Okay? It's crazy. They recorded there the early successes of capitalism. Pilgrims found that they had more food than they could eat themselves. And it was this bounty that then was celebrated at the first Thanksgiving feast. And this, by the way, is cited in George Washington's Thanksgiving Day Proclamation. It's all there. This is what the original Thanksgiving is about. And, my own commentary on this is we ought to be teaching this in schools. If we can teach this story the way it really happened, true and correct history, to first graders, second graders, third graders, we gradually will get our country back as we raise young Americans to value the miracle that is capitalism. There is no greater system on this planet for bringing bounty to its people than the free market capitalist system. And by extension, of course, anywhere that collectivism is tried, it fails, it brings disaster, disease, and death. So this Thanksgiving holiday, I honor America, our beautiful country. I am so grateful to spend every day that I can, Monday through Friday, on this program with each and every one of you. I hope you're having a wonderful Thanksgiving. I love you all. And I look forward to doing this and continuing this tradition that Rush started many years ago, next year and the year after. I thank you and have a happy Thanksgiving. Blessings to all of you. Sam Rajowski, The What's Right Show. We'll be back tomorrow.